Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another true crime video. Now, I want to hop straight into this one because I've been waiting to talk about it for so long. I've been following this case for months now and it leaves me so frustrated. This is a case I'll probably have to do like an update video on maybe later in the year because there will be more to this, guarantee you. So let's get right into it. Today we are talking about Rebecca Zahou. She was born on March 15th, 1979 in Burma, and her family was actually forced to leave their homeland and she came to the US. So she came to San Diego, California and worked as an ophthalmology technician. And one day at work, she met a man named Jonah Shacknai. He came into the office and she was instantly interested in him, and likewise for him, the two of them hit it off and they ended up in a relationship.
Rebecca was completely full of life. She was a very enthusiastic person.
Now here's what you need to know about Jonah. Jonah is very, very, very rich. He is the founder and CEO of a pharmaceutical company.
Jonah, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, great to be here, Jim.
Shacknai was a star in the business world, known for his innovative products.
They figured out how to create something similar to Botox.
Jonah actually had 3 kids from 2 previous marriages, the youngest being a 6-year-old boy named Max. And Rebecca didn't have any children of her own, so she was so happy when she found out he had kids, and she loved little Max. The two of them were actually very close. Dina Shacknai, who is Jonah Shacknai's ex-wife and mother of Max, did not like this, had a little bit of jealousy that another woman was in Max's life so much, was so well liked by him.
They were not close. I think there were times when Dina made it a bit difficult for Rebecca.
So Jonah Shacknai actually lived in this very, very famous mansion. This is called the Spreckles Mansion in Coronado, California, which is a beautiful area. It's a small island with a bridge coming off of it to San Diego. It's a really beautiful, but and this is a very beautiful, but also very expensive place to live. But on June 11th of 2001, Rebecca and Max were at the Spreckles Mansion when Max was playing upstairs and Rebecca was in a different area of the house. But all of a sudden, Max somehow managed to fall off of their stairs balcony from the 2nd floor all the way to the floor of the mansion. Since Rebecca was in a different room of the house when the accident happened, she didn't actually see Max fall herself. She just heard the sound and came running out. Max was taken to the hospital.
911, where's your emergency?
Rebecca's sister Zena called 911.
He fell down the stairs. He's not breathing.
Somehow, 6-year-old Max had taken a horrific fall, which neither Rebecca nor Zena saw. Rebecca called Jonah.
And unfortunately, he remained in critical condition until he passed away in the hospital on July 16th of 2011. But that is not it for this story. This gets even weirder and even sketchier. So while Max was in the hospital, it was quite a few days that he was in there. What was it, 5 days? Yeah, about 5 days. Obviously, having a child in critical condition is extremely hard for the family, and as many relatives that can try to come to the aid of their loved ones during this time. So Jonah's brother Adam Shacknai decided to come in on July 13th, and he was just there to, give support and help the family mourn. But on the night of Wednesday, July 13th, 2011, that night only 2 people were at the house, Adam and Rebecca. And on July 14th, 2011, the next morning, Adam came out of the guest room and walked into a terrible sight. He saw Rebecca's body hanging from the top floor of the Spreckles Mansion, bound by a red rope. So he quickly called 911.
An emergency, what are you reporting?
Yeah, I got a girl hung herself. It's on Ocean Boulevard across from the hotel, same place that you came and got the kid yesterday.
Okay, sir, what is the address?
I'm not sure. The back house is 1928 something.
Okay, sir, is she still alive?
I don't know. No! Fuck you too!
Sir, are you there?
Are you alive? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Did you get the address?
No, sir, I need the address.
Be all right. She came here yesterday to pick up a little boy.
Okay, sir, I wasn't working yesterday. I don't know what you're talking
check
about.
Your records?
Sir, I checked all of the records yesterday. I can't find anything on Ocean Boulevard. Can you tell me what the address is?
I'm looking. Just start sending them towards the hotel.
Okay, I understand that. I just need the exact address. I can't help you until I have the address.
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
1043 Ocean? Okay,
Yeah.
Is she still alive?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me get the fire department. Sir, hang on. Let me get the fire department on the phone to help you, okay? Hang on just a minute.
Oh, fuck. Come on.
Fire medical emergency?
Coronado with the transfer. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Hi, what's
That lady has hung herself.
the address?
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
1043 Ocean Boulevard?
Yeah.
Okay, what's wrong?
She hung herself, man. I woke up.
Okay, is this a house?
It's a house. Yeah.
Okay, how old is she?
I'd say about 30.
30? Okay. When was the last time you saw her?
Last night.
Okay, is she beyond help?
Well, give me some. I'm compressing her chest right now.
Okay, hold on. So what's your name?
Shacknai.
Okay, I have help on the way. What's your cell phone number? Is it 901-485?
901-485.
Okay, listen to me. Help is coming right now, okay? And Peter, you're on the way?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and you're right there with her. Did you cut her down?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So as you probably heard, Adam was able to cut Rebecca down and start trying to give her CPR, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. Rebecca was pronounced dead, and she was only 32 years old. During this time, Jonah was at the hospital with his son. Remember, at this point, he's still alive. He was in critical condition though. So obviously the parents are gonna be there pretty much the whole time that he's in there.
Anyone that's had a child with a grave injury understands that it's the loneliest place on earth.
And while he was at the hospital, he received a text message from his brother Adam saying that he needed to call him ASAP. So of course he called him, and Adam gave him the news.
And he told me that Rebecca had taken her life. And I said, what? Can you imagine the impact of something like that when I was already facing, certainly the biggest crisis of my life? So yeah, it was surreal.
There were some really sketchy details to this suicide. If Rebecca really did kill herself, this was a very strange way of doing it, and let me tell you why. Rebecca's feet and her hands were completely tied up behind her in pretty intricate knots. She had a t-shirt gagging her and a noose around her neck. And not only that, but the part that makes this so weird is that Rebecca was found hanging completely naked. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have never heard of a woman killing herself butt naked in public. So obviously the news of what happened spread around this area and around the country pretty quickly, and it wasn't long before people were talking about this and wondering what happened. Another strange thing about this is that if Rebecca did kill herself, which people assume she killed herself out of grief or guilt over Max was still alive at this point. He was still alive. He could have survived. They didn't know at that point. It's odd to kill yourself before he's even passed away if you were going to do that, Wouldn't she have wanted to be there to support Jonah and, fight for Max? So a couple days after Rebecca passed away, Max also passed away. So this was a terribly difficult time for Jonah. So obviously this is sketch, and the San Diego Sheriff's Department thought so too. Since this was two odd deaths in the same house, days from each other, they launched an investigation. Now, Rebecca's room also has some different aspects to it that make people suspicious as to whether or not this was really a suicide. First of all, on the balcony, investigators found her footprints as well as a man's boot print. There were also 2 knives on the ground. And then on the shelf in her room, there was a book called Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. And in the book, there's a page that talks about a ritual and shows a drawing of a naked woman with a rope tying her hands together behind her back, as well as a rope being tied around her neck. It also specifically says to use red rope. But the sketchiest thing of all, a message had been painted in black paint on the back of her door saying, "She saved him, you can save her." Once they launched an investigation into the case, a neighbor came forward and said they heard several loud screams on the night Rebecca was killed or killed herself, I guess.
I heard the woman yell, then yell for help. she went, and she goes, help, help.
Also, an eyewitness came forward to police. This witness said that they saw a person going into the house that resembled Dina Shacknai, which is Jonah's ex-wife, who kind of did not like Rebecca spending so much time with her son. Reported seeing someone that looked like her going into the house late at night before Rebecca was found the next morning, obviously. But actually, investigators immediately turned their attention to Adam Shacknai, Jonah Shacknai's brother. Now, obviously this is because he was the only person with Rebecca that night, the only person that they knew of being there. However, he agreed to take a polygraph test that day.
I think I got up and reached her and realized I wasn't going to be able to get her off without a knife. You know, I probably tried to just realize, I probably quickly, you know, realized this ain't going to happen, you know, like this. I went around the back into the house, which the door was open. I got a knife from their butcher block thing, came back out, cut her down, and probably called 911 shortly after, if not before.
Okay. All right. Did at any point think she was alive?
You know, call me a can-do person or something, but probably not. But I thought, how would I answer if I didn't try something?
Okay, so
you know,
you tried
I'm a responsible person.
Okay, tried some CPR.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you been trained in that with the boat stuff?
Years and years ago.
Okay.
Not enough to amount to anything.
Okay.
After I cut her down, when I went to take her pulse, you know, at some point, which I didn't even do that first, I remember having to get something out of her hands. And that's why I've been asking these detectives and stuff if she was tied up or what. I mean, I'm kind of all
it's
in
kind
a blur,
of blur, yeah.
You know, but I remember having to move something, try to get her pulse out of the way.
Okay.
You know, very much.
And how about her feet? Anything unusual about her feet?
I don't remember that, but I fear. I hope to God she wasn't tied up.
Okay.
But and again, I asked the detective that, you know, and I don't recall.
And then, so now, as far as the CPR, you did the chest compressions, and then did you blow in her mouth and nose?
I got once I got 911 on the line, I went ahead and blew in her mouth.
Okay. And her mouth was open and clear and everything?
I didn't even do all that. I should have. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't do that. I think they said tilt the head back. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Okay.
I just put my mouth over hers. I said, fuck it. It's my brother's girlfriend. I'll do it. And did it.
All right. And no tape across her mouth or anything like this?
No. There was a gag in her mouth, though.
A gag in her mouth?
Yeah.
What was that?
Something. I had to pull something out of her mouth.
Okay. The most important thing of all is what?
Be honest.
That's it. Honest or don't lie. Either answer is acceptable. Regarding the death of Rebecca, do you know for sure if anyone did anything to her that resulted in her death?
No.
Regarding the death of Rebecca, did you yourself do anything to her that resulted in her death?
No.
Regarding the death of Rebecca, were you in that guest room that she was found hanging from at any time during the night?
No.
These are hard tests to do when you're this close to what's going on here, like you said.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get rid of that emotional factor.
Right.
And you could have done a whole lot worse on the test. Could have done a whole lot better, too. But based on what I've got here, we're kind of in that inconclusive range, which really doesn't bother me that much.
And the results of it were inconclusive, which unfortunately happens with a lot of cases. If you are unconclusive, that does not mean you are guilty, although a lot of people think it makes someone suspicious. I just want to point it out that lie detector tests are really not as exact as people think they are. They're often wrong, and a lot of people end up getting accused of things they didn't do because of the lie detector test. I'm not saying that he didn't do it, because I don't know, but I'm saying that the inconclusive result does not mean innocent or guilty. But Adam's family describes him as a very nice guy, well-liked around the community. They said that he was a really good person who could never commit a crime like this. Adam worked with boats for a living. He would know how to do really intense knots, and the knots that were tied on Rebecca were pretty intricate knots to do. So on September 2nd, 2011, 7 weeks after the deaths of Max and Rebecca, Sheriff Bill Gore of the Sheriff's Department called for a press conference to announce the department had finally come to a conclusion about the two deaths.
One was an accident, the other a suicide, the result of a lengthy investigation into the July deaths of Rebecca Zahou and 6-year-old Max Shacknai. Coronado Police, the Sheriff's Department, medical examiner, and others looked into the deaths and determined there was no foul play in either case. There were no witnesses, Investigators say Max fell while on a staircase and that Zahou took her own life 3 days later.
Witness interviews, the medical evidence, and the forensic evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, and biomechanics. They are all compelling and all point persuasively to a single conclusion. These deaths were not the result of any criminal acts.
They said that the autopsy, fingerprints, DNA were all not showing any sign that Rebecca was attacked in any way before she died. They also said that the fingerprints that were found on the knife, on the balcony, on the door, on the bedpost were all Rebecca's. The DNA on the ropes was also only Rebecca's. Investigators also said that they chose to disregard the witness statement about someone coming into the house late at night and the screams coming from the house. They said that the boot mark on the patio was an accidental footprint from one of the investigators or police. So that was it. That was their conclusion. She got sad about Max, felt guilty, got naked, tied these crazy ropes around herself, bound herself with a t-shirt in her mouth, and jumped off the balcony naked in public. Case closed. Her family said, we're not done.
But you say that she didn't blame herself for this. She realized this was an accident.
That's correct. She was upset about it, but not upset to kill herself. And the only people that came up with that theory was Jonah, Shacknai, and the sheriff's department. They all came to that conclusion that she was upset enough to kill herself, but they had no proof.
She sent you a text message.
That's correct.
July 11th, 2011, she said in part, quote, "It's a nightmare, and partially it's hard for me because I love him like my own, but he's not, and I need to be strong for Jonah." How did you interpret that when you received it?
I interpret that she wants to be strong for people around her. She wants to be the person who uplifts the person who's down. She had plans to help the family.
Max's mother, Dina, was actually really unhappy with the final verdict about how her son died. Dina Shacknai went on to the Dr. Phil show and talked about how she consulted forensic pathologist Dr. Judy Melnick, who concluded that Rebecca had to have been involved in the death.
It didn't make sense. The report generated by the biomechanics expert, Dr. Gomez, had Max going over the banister when his center of gravity was way too low. And then the pattern of injuries on his body didn't match the report from the biomechanics expert. The carpeting on the second story is thick pile carpeting. And the scenario as proposed by the police department was that Max was going at a high rate of speed on his Razor scooter, and that's how he somehow propelled himself over the banister. Anybody who's ridden a scooter would know that you can't go at a high rate of speed on thick pile carpeting. There's a pattern of abrasion on his back that if you were to hold him upright, the top of the 7 would correspond to the top of the banister if he was standing against the banister, backing into it. His center of gravity would be too low to go over. Police department scenario has Max grabbing onto the chandelier as he swings across the room and then sliding down the opposite banister. So why doesn't he have any abrasions on his hands?
So you believe Max was lifted over that railing?
The biomechanics indicate that there's no other way for him to go over the railing, especially if he already backs into it. He would just collapse down.
Well, someone then lifted him over. Was that Rebecca Zahou?
I believe she had direct involvement, knowledge of, or participation in.
But Rebecca's family also decided to go on to Dr. Phil, and they brought on their lawyer, Keith Greer.
Keith, what do you think happened?
It was in the shower of the master bedroom, which has glass doors on it, and there's one drop of Rebecca's menstrual blood, we believe, on the floor there. Something happens then, and she winds up on the opposite side of the house with her cell phone and with a towel wrapped around her, winds up getting dropped on the floor right outside the bedroom where she's murdered. And then when it got out of control, she dropped the towel, she ran to try and escape, she screamed for help. The screams were heard by a neighbor. At that point in time, she struck on the back of the head 4 times. We think at that point in time, her legs were taped together because there is tape residue on her shins, on both legs. She was gagged and bound.
Rebecca's family decided to make the very heart-wrenching decision to disturb the resting place of Rebecca and exhume her body, which basically means to dig her up. And they did this so that they could get a second autopsy done on her. Now, what's weird about this is the San Diego County County coroner also found those hemorrhages, but they dismissed them because they figured they were from her jumping off the balcony, that she must have hit her head on something on the way down. So Rebecca's family asked them to reopen the case, but the request was rejected without comment. So fast forward to recently, 7 years later in 2018, ABC actually hired a private investigator to take a second look at things, and he found several things that did not add up from the original report. First, the report said that Rebecca's fingerprints were on the scene. However, how is this possible when Adam claimed to have cut her down from the balcony and then did mouth-to-mouth CPR on her? How would his DNA be nowhere on her body? But they claimed that his DNA was not found anywhere on her body or on her. He also, like most of us, think it's very odd that Rebecca tied her hands behind her back. Since in the original report they said that anyone could tie this type of knot, decided to get in contact with a rope tying expert.
Former NYPD Detective Herman Weisberg asked this boat captain and knot expert to tie his hands the way Rebecca's were tied.
Throw a bite around one of your wrists or however you would do it.
He had some difficulty tying his own wrist behind his back, but he managed it.
Well, we just finished, we just came off the set, in fact, and we had as a guest a rope expert today to address whether or not Rebecca Zahou is likely to have been able to bind her hands and feet. And this guy's a rope expert, and I as just a layperson looking at the video that the police put out there to sort of convince us that it's possible for her to do this, I looked at that video and I immediately, it seemed to go the other direction for him. It seemed to make it even less likely that she could have done it. It looked like a block and tackle off some sort of French warship, French ship of the line. It just was incredibly complex. The expert, the rope expert, came on today, showed us how complicated it is and how impossible it would be for her to put her hands behind her back and secure herself that way.
So maybe Rebecca really did know how to tie the knot. Jonah did say that she would often go boating with him and she had tied up the boat many times. This is not the way that anyone would be tying up a boat. And he also started questioning the way she fell off of the balcony.
She would have hopped.
It's extremely difficult to get yourself in that position while you're tied up, while you're wearing a gag. Naked.
He said that he thinks it's possible that someone could have thrown her body off the balcony without even stepping on the balcony, which would explain why there was no other fingerprints or footprints.
Similar, a little bit heavier, but we erred to the side of heavier rather than lighter.
All right, let's see if you can do it.
It shows that someone could have taken Rebecca's body, put it down, leaned it against that rail, and shoved it over.
And at the end of his investigation, he came to the conclusion that this may not be suicide, but he did not have enough evidence to prove there was foul play involved. So then there's this. In 2017, new evidence came out about this case, and this is really disturbing. I just want to give you a heads up for anyone who has been sexually assaulted. One of the knives in the room they had determined had been inserted into Rebecca's private area.
We believe then that sometime after that then she is sexually assaulted. You see the 3 rivets that are here? Mm-hmm. On the photos, this rivet's red. The bottom rivet is red. If there's blood on this side and there's blood on this side, but there's blood on all sides because she was concerned this may have been a sexual assault. He tied up her legs, he tied her hands behind her back. We allege that she woke up after she was unconscious and after she'd been tied up already, and she attempted to escape. But it was really odd because the fingerprints were on it like this, with the sharp part pointing towards you. But then when I go like this and hold it behind my back, the fingerprints all come into place. She was trying to get that to cut herself free.
So she's in defense mode at this time. She's trying to escape.
And this is when Rebecca's family and Keith Greer decided to file a lawsuit. Filed a wrongful death suit for the family, claiming that Dina, her sister Nina, and Adam worked together to kill Rebecca. Remember that woman that was seen? She looked like Dina. They accused Dina of going into the house, striking Rebecca in the head 4 times, tying her up, gagging her, and then staging it as a suicide. Of course, Dina completely completely denies this. Of course, Dina denies this. And after further investigation, they were able to determine that it wasn't even possible for Dina to have been involved because she was seen on camera leaving the hospital because her son was in there at the same time that Rebecca was killed. So she just could not have done this. Once their lawyer realized this, he solely targeted Adam. But Adam himself stated that he does occasionally work with knots, but they don't do a lot of knot tying because he works on a river. What about the message on the door? When you compare the handwriting samples, they do look more like Adam's than they do Rebecca's. And the San Diego Sheriff Department never, ever did a handwriting test on that door. But unfortunately, there really isn't much evidence for this that can be used because it's very hard to determine someone's handwriting on a door versus just writing with a piece of paper. It's completely different and hard to really come to a conclusion on. Recently, this year, this April 4th, 2018, Rebecca's family had their chance to prove that she was murdered in a civil case.
Pari Zahou, Rebecca Zahou's mother, broke down on the stand speaking about her late daughter and how she would regularly send money to her parents. But the most compelling testimony came from fingerprint expert Lisa DeMeo, who spoke about Zahou's prints that were found on a kitchen knife near her at the crime scene. Keith Greer, attorney for the Zahou family, had DeMeo demonstrate how Rebecca may have been holding the knife. His claim? She had tried to free herself before she was murdered.
Right index, right middle, right ring.
And after all the information in both sides of the case were presented to the jury, they came to the conclusion that Adam Shacknai was responsible for the death of Rebecca Zahou.
What's going to happen tomorrow? Don't know yet, gang. We're living a day at a time. Right now, we're still in shock, I think, to get through this. So we do have some more work to do. We have potentially a punitive damage case tomorrow. We'll see if that happens.
Is it possible that we come back this afternoon and break that?
We may not. I mean, it's $5 million is a lot of money. It's more than he'll ever have in his life. If punitive damage phase is not necessary, we have to talk to some other attorneys, but there's some technicalities we have to look at. We may not do it.
And he must pay her family $5 million. But it's not what Rebecca's family is looking for. They're not after money. They want justice for their family member. But Rebecca's sister Mary, who's been very involved in this case, still believes that it was Adam to this day, and she's not going to stop fighting until she gets justice for her sister. She's holding out hope that one day Adam, who is now 54, will be criminally charged in the case. But she also said that she wants to forgive Adam because that's what Rebecca would have done. I don't think this case is over. I don't think the coverage of it is over because it's such an unsatisfying conclusion. It's so frustrating. I mean, it's hard to say. Rebecca could have killed herself. They definitely couldn't prove that she couldn't have done it. But it doesn't seem very likely, and it doesn't seem like a very common way to kill yourself. It's just all very odd. The timing of it is odd. I have so many questions, and I want to know what you guys think. Leave me a comment. Tell me your thoughts on this. Do you think it was Adam? Do you think Rebecca killed herself? Do you think there was someone else involved, which I think could be possible as well? Such a frustrating one. I feel so sorry for everyone who is grieving Rebecca and Max. It's a terrible situation. My heart goes out to everyone involved on both sides. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And that's it for me today, guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye.